Welcome to Vets Talk, and I'm with Dr Anne Fawcett from Sydney Animal Hospitals. And what made you want to become a vet?
That's a really good question. I actually had intended to become a career philosopher, and when I finished high school I was studying philosophy and thought it was fantastic, and studied ethics and thought that was great, wanted to learn how to live a good life and so forth, and got to the end of my philosophy degree, went to the careers advisor, and they said I could now be a bank teller, which wasn't really what I wanted to do with my philosophy degree. And so I had a bit of an existential crisis and thought, well, what makes me really happy? And it was being with animals. How can I have a job that maximises that? Well, I could be a vet, so I applied and got in, and hence became a vet, and I'm really passionate about it. I love it. I just want to show you this cat as well. So this is a beautiful Bengal cat. He's really, really nervous, so go very, very slowly with him. He's from a breeder.
Is it easy educating pet owners?
It's always interesting trying to educate people. I think it's a process of mutual education, because there's a lot of things that pet owners bring to the table as well. They're really experienced and really knowledgeable about their own animals in most cases, and I often learn a lot from pet owners. But yeah, a big part of being a vet is actually learning how to teach people about looking after animals, which I didn't expect when I studied veterinary science. Oh, did she do that too?
She does that
as well.
It's a delightful
habit.
Yes.
Usually they grow out of that, but not to be encouraged, because you don't want a 6-kilo cat
That's it, running up
doing
your
the
back.
same thing.
All right, what kind of car do you drive?
I have a fourth-hand Subaru Forester.
I thought you might.
That has been battered beyond belief. I think it's referred to as a paddock basher, although it goes nowhere near paddock.
Why do you think some pet owners feel they're being ripped off by vets?
I think because part of the reason is that the immediate comparison is the cost of medical care. And in Australia, we have such a great healthcare system, which I hope continues, and we don't see the full cost. So when you go to the pharmacy and you pick up a script, it's usually around $20. What you aren't seeing is the money that the government's paying. The government picks up the tab for many of these things. If you go and have an MRI, you might pay $60 or $200, but you're not seeing the actual cost that the government is paying. So clients come in and they say, gee, I'm paying this much money for my dog's MRI, but I only paid this much. My vet's ripping me off. But your vet's actually paying for the machinery,
Absolutely.
for the staff, the overheads, everything, and has to recover those costs. So there is a huge difference between veterinary and medical costs, but there are, there's taxes to fund medical treatment, none of which fund animal treatment. So that's a big reason for the discrepancy.
So what about pet insurance?
I think we do have that in a sense. The closest thing we have to a Medicare for pet owners is pet insurance.
Yep.
And I think it's fantastic, because even though people they will pay their bill up front, so they will pay the full cost, they get a rebate depending on what they're claiming and the policy they have, and that's fantastic. I think pet insurance is something that everyone should have if they can, because it just means that you are going to get some money back in most cases, so you're not spending the whole amount.
The facts speak for themselves. What about your experience?
I think anyone who's a veterinarian feels a lot of angst, and I've lost 5 colleagues to suicide, in fact, this year.
Oh, sorry.
So it's a raw topic for me, but I do think that it's a very rewarding job. I think that most of the time when people do make that awful decision, it's to do with lots of things. It's not just about being a vet. I think there's other things going on in people's lives. And one thing I would say, having taught a number of vet students as well, is a trait that runs very strongly through our profession is perfectionism.
Yeah.
Vets really want to do the best job, and they usually become vets because they want to fix animals. That's their strongest driving motivation, and you can't. But also, doctors work in a huge team. So they work in hospitals. It's much less common within Australia, at very least, to be a doctor who's working completely solo. Obviously GPs are an exception, but doctors in hospitals are part of bigger teams and very rarely have the sole responsibility of a case. Whereas as vets, we often have sole responsibility, or the team might be very, very small. Emotions do ride high, and for a lot of people, their pets are their family, or even closer to them than their family members. So it's a really intense profession in that regard. And I think it's so important for vets to have a support network. It's crucial. You really need that.
Now, here on Vet Talk TV, we're trying to discourage the use of Dr. Google, but I hear you're a bit of a fan.
I am, because I do it myself. If my doctor gives me advice, or if indeed a specialist vet gives me advice, I like to check up on that advice as well, and I like to do my own research. And I actually find that a lot of clients are very good at Google. They're very good at using it as a useful research tool, and they're good at finding credible information. People are pretty information savvy, and they're pretty good at sorting out the wheat from the chaff in most cases. In some cases, clients have got it wrong, and they'll come in with the information, but I'm really happy to talk to them. I'm happy to look at the sites that they've gone to, and I'm happy to show them other sites that I think are quite helpful as well. So I think there's a lot of good resources out there, but it's important to look for credible information and to make sure that it's up to date, because stuff that's even 3 or 5 years old can be far out of date.
Well, we're hoping Vet Talk TV will be one of those resources that people will go to.
I think it's a fantastic idea.
And come and see what you're talking about and say, oh, no, she doesn't know what she's talking about.
I hope not. Would you run a CBC, a QBC and a GHB at 12 months? Well, there you go, vet speak.
Exactly.
So is it hard to explain some things to clients without using vet speak?
Yeah, and it's something that we need to constantly battle against, because when we are communicating with each other and with colleagues, it's a convention that we use medical terminology, some of which is a little bit obscure to the non-medical people out there. But I do agree that sometimes vets tend to fall into that medical speak, and it can be a little hard to know what they're talking about. So I often have friends who've gone to their vet and ring me up and say, my vet said this, what on earth was that about? So I translate for them. And it's something that we need to be reminded of constantly. So if your vet does say something to you and you don't understand, for example, they might say, well, the blood results have ruled out this, this and that, and you don't understand what it means to rule out this, this and that, or what this, this and that even are, just ask them. They're really happy to answer. They might just assume that you know what they're talking about.
Right, okay.